My gang is sexy. Let's talk Napoleonics. Let's talk Borodino, a Triumph and Glory game made by Richard Berg. This one was in 2004. Somewhere on the line, I saw a picture of this somewhere. Maybe I saw it on BGG or I don't know. It was posted somewhere. And I thought to myself, man, this looks like, this is before I knew who made it and where it came from. But I said, this looks like Great Battles of the American Civil War, only in Napoleonics. Well, it's not far from it. It has a lot of similarities to the Great Battles of the American Civil War. Well, I went looking for this thing, had a couple of look-sees at it, but I didn't want to pay the price from certain places, and I knew somebody had one that at that time they didn't want to part with it. Well, good old Doug Gearhart, Mr. Playwright himself, decided he was going to send me his copy of it, and I sure do appreciate the DUG sending me this thing. And 2004 is when this came out, and there's one before it, Napoleon, Battles of Napoleon or something like that, which I think I'm going to have to try to find that now. I've been looking, and I can't find anything less than $95, and that's not even a new copy or, a very good copy or a near mint, whatever. But this one here was in great shape. I did a little clipping, did a little sorting, got it set up. And the one interesting thing about this game is there's no reinforcements. Everything's on the map, okay? You've got Napoleon with his army, and then you've got, and of course, now they're in Russia, right? And this is Borodino with the Great Redoubt, which you can see right there in the middle of the map. And then you've got, who is it? I gotta say Zukov, Kutuzov, sitting right there, he's kind of messed up. I think he's riding around in a wagon. His command level's terrible. He's got the First West and the Second West Army. They're commanded by Bagration and Barclay, I believe. And then he's got the reserve, the guard in reserve, and he's got the big, massive reserve artillery, which, as you can see, they are in action now. The game works off an order system. And when I say the order system, you've got these cards that you use. Let's see, let me see if I can't get them on the screen. Or you've got these chips. You're not going to see that. Let's try down here. All right. So you can see down here in the corner, you've got under orders. All right. And there's also ones that say no orders. And I guess you'll put these things face down so that your opponent can't see which ones. Well, I'm playing solo, so I'm going to see. And Napoleon, he will always be able to change orders every turn. Kutuzov, he has to roll to see if he's going to be successful. He might get delayed in changing his orders by one turn or maybe two turns, and it could even be even farther depending on what his dice rolls. Now, unfortunately, you only roll on a D10, and each time he delays, he gets a die roll modifier, which will help him get back down to the possibility of getting to change his orders. But when he assigns orders and I'm playing the full game, they have two scenarios. They have the full game and they have the Borodino Redoubt, which is right there. He gets like, if he's doing the first Western Army under Barclay de Tolly, he can put three orders assignments, three under order assignments. If he gets the second Western, he can do like two, or if he decides to do the reserve corps or the guard reserve, he can only issue one order, okay? On Napoleon's side, he's the only one that can issue orders to the Imperial Guard, which right now, since they are still not under orders, they get half movement. They're moving to the front. Probably another turn or two, which I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm probably gonna take this thing down because I got to do some reviewing on stuff, and this is like the perfect table to do that. But the Imperial Guard's sitting right here, and they're slowly moving to the front. Now, this thing all started with Ney, and get this thing back in the middle here. Right here in the middle, I started this thing with Eugene's 4th Corps. Ney had the 3rd Corps, and DeVoe's 1st Corps, because they were all centralized right here to push through the redoubts. And then let me tell you something. They tore, you can see they're still holding on to this one over here, and they literally almost overran the Great Redoubt. You can see, well, these are the guards units that came up from the Guard Reserve for the Russians. But these guys here are an independent formation, and they have stayed in that redoubt the whole time. the French have not been able to run them off there. And as you can see, some of Eugene is bypassed. This is actually the second time Eugene's gone past the Great Redoubt trying to break up these earthworks over here. He's crossed the first one, knocking out a bunch of independent units from the second Western Army. But he got himself caught here in the middle, and Eugene's got a pretty decent force. And a couple of cavalry charges by Russian cavalry, which, by the way, Russian cavalry, for the most part in this game, they're not the most effective thing. They've got a bunch of cavalry units whose cohesion levels are 1, 2s, as you can see them around the board, 1s and 2s up. And in order for these guys to charge, you got to make a cohesion check. Well, they don't pass them very often. Needless to say, interesting little concept in this game is when any infantry unit wants to charge in or close assault, which there's no rifle or musket fire in this game. Okay, there's no musket fire. There's artillery fire, but there's no musket fire. It's all handled with a combat. Okay. Which is pretty much, these troops charging in there and breaking them up, which unlike the Civil War, they didn't stand out there at 100 yards and exchange volleys. My understanding of Napoleonics was they charged in there and tried to break these things apart, overrun them, destroy them, whatever. So before you can execute that combat, for example, this unit right here, he would have to roll against his cohesion. Well, here's an interesting little rule, but I don't know if I've ever seen this in another game. Unlike defensive fire like you'd have in GBACW, you pick up one of these units and they're going to have a modifier on the unit. And you can see right next to him there, it's got you might have said, but it's got a +0. That might say +1, it might say +2. What it is that's a die roll modifier against that cohesion of that unit checking to assault. So if he's a +1, he's got a cohesion of 5. He's now, in a sense, got a cohesion of 4. So, or what you're going to do is you're going to increase the die roll that he rolls for his cohesion check. You're going to increase it by 1. Other things that might come into play for, they call it shock, I'm sorry, that might come into play for shock, you're going to have dice roll modifiers for the actual shock. Now, this is why I say this is close to GBACW, because look at that shock resolution table. Just like GBACW, all right? Results are a little different. Okay, that's your charts right there. That's it. That's everything in the game. And then you've got terrain on the back. Okay, so this might be one of the nicer and easier Napoleonic games I think I've ever played. I've really been enjoying this. The turns in this game, excuse me. Every formation has 2 activation chits. Okay. Now, you figure you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 formations for the French, which is 14 chits, and then you got you've got the 2 armies, the west, the first west and the second west. They've got 2 each. Okay, and then you have these artillery barrage markers, which you can drop an artillery barrage marker at the cost of one of your under orders. So, like if the French wanted to use it, they would only be able to place 2 units under order, and then they would place this artillery barrage marker here. This would be like for the grand cannonade or whatever, which these guys might be using that here if the French get up in that way and start to break through that line. And the difference between an artillery barrage and then just regular artillery shooting is all units that are adjacent in a line, like these guys, all in a line, you'd be able to fire, this stack here, and then you'd get pluses for all these guys in this line. All right. And from what I read the rules, it's anybody that's adjacent. So I'm assuming, he's here. So here's how I've been doing it. If I were to do that barrage with these guys here, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. All of these guys would combine. Now, it's not the combine you think. Artillery in this game, if an artillery battery fires and there's 2 of them in a hex, you take the strength of the first top one, and then you add +2 for each battery underneath it that's firing with it. And then you're going to go, you're going to have die roll modifiers on the table here, and then you're going to roll against this table right here. Pretty simple, okay? You might get a disorder cohesion check, you might get an automatic disorder, you might get an automatic disorder with a retreat. And then like I say, at point blank range, you're going to get a +1 for firing in an adjacent unit. All right. If the target formation is in square, you're going to get a +1 on that if you're artillery firing at a square. Right. Different things. Terrain has an effect. Firing up a slope, firing into woods. Now, here's interesting. Firing into woods or into a village, the artillery gets a +1 when they're shooting. But if they're firing out of the woods or out of a village, they get a -1. So it's interesting. They pay a penalty for shooting out of those things, okay? Also, you can't, in a steep slope hex like would be here in front of the redoubts, the cannons cannot shoot straight down the adjacent hex in front of them. So that takes that out of play. And as you can see, there are no Russian artillery left in these hexes. And if you look over to the, casualty charts there, see if we can get there. Yeah, look at all that. This is all eliminated units, which has a very unique system. Artillery and I think it's artillery and I think cavalry. I have to check, but I know artillery for sure. If they double disorder, they don't go to withdrawal box. They're eliminated. Okay, because you're not going to recover artillery. It's not like you have a factory sitting behind the lines right there that's rebuilding them as fast as you get them blown up. All right. Now the system works with, you see a withdrawal box and a recovery box. So when a unit gets disrupted a second time, they go to the withdrawal box. Okay. At the end of the turn, you have a recovery phase, and on the recovery phase, you will roll against their cohesion. All right. And if they pass it, they move down to the recovery box. If they fail it, they go to the eliminated box. What a cool, easy system, man. So you're showing the potential for units to be, maybe they sort of unscrambled the disorganized force and put them back together as a fighting force, but they're going to still be in a disordered state, or they were so shattered that it wasn't enough to put them back together and the unit ends up being eliminated. All right. Easy, smooth, not hard to figure out. And I would have thought at first this was going to be disastrous. There'd be so many units that would get wiped out. But no, that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes units can retreat. You might get a cohesion retreat where you're going to roll against cohesion. If you fail it, you're going to retreat 1 hex. Okay. You have cavalry charges. The thing about a cavalry charge is there's no, if infantry charges, shock assaults, something has cannons in it, the cannons are going to get a reaction fire. Cavalry, they will, but the cavalry doesn't pay the price for like infantry with a +1 modifier against their cohesion check for a charge, because they're starting 2 to 3 hexes away from the unit. So if you got a cavalry unit within 3 hexes and it can't be more than 2 movement points in any 1 hex, they're going to roll for their cohesion check, and then you're going to move them. They're going to move into the face of the target they're charging. And like I say, artillery will get reaction fire. The thing about a cavalry charge is, if you disorder it from reaction fire, they can still charge. They still have the option. If infantry in shock or cavalry in shock, that means they didn't charge, they were adjacent. If they suffer a disorder from reaction fire, the shock is completely canceled. All right. And you're checking individual units and stuff in some cases. Some cases you're checking the top unit. For like reaction fire, it only affects the top unit in the stack. So, you might have 2 cavalry formations charge into 1 unit, but one of them fails their charge cohesion check, and now you got this measly little 3 strength unit over here. He's charging because you committed to it, because you got little markers that you're going to throw on your units to designate the charge. You're going to have, and those look familiar. That's got GBACW written all over it. So you're going to have that. All right. For command, keeping your formations together, okay? You've got to, all right, let's show an example right here. Right now, DeVoe is okay because, well, no, he's not. So 2 hexes, 2 or 3, might be 3, it might be 2, I can't remember. We'll say it's 2 for this situation. So if I sign DeVoe orders, I got to pick which formation group they call them that it's going to. So I sign DeVoe orders, and I'm saying it's this whole group here. Well, this guy here, these guys here, they're 1, 2, there's 2 hexes gap between them. They're not going to be under those orders. So the only way I can get them to act full is I got to roll against, let's pull up a chit. Oh, DeVoe, lucky. So DeVoe has this number right there, 6, all right? If I want to make those guys get a full activation just like them, I got to roll against that number. The French have much better numbers than the Russians do, okay? And if he passes that cohesion, he can execute a full activation just like his buddies over here on this side of the battlefield, all right? However, if you fail that roll, they don't get to do anything. They can't rally, they can't fire guns, they can't do nothing. All right, if you choose not to, like let's say I choose not to try to give them the full activation like their brothers over here, and I don't roll for it, I just choose not to do it, they can still fire their artillery. They can move half their movement points, which they're only 4, so you're not moving very far. And they can shock, and there's going to be modifiers against the shock depending on whether there are leaders there. Like Napoleon, you've got 2 leaders. You got Tusov, you got Napoleon. So Napoleon is sitting within range of these guys. He can help them out a little bit. And in order for Napoleon to put stuff in orders, he's got to be within his range to assign orders to people. Okay. The French have built a mass cavalry force. Here it is over here, mixed in over here with Poniatowski's division. But these guys are charging through, and the Russian cavalry is sitting here. As you notice, they're not here anymore because their cohesion levels were 1, and they didn't have a disordered side. So they went to the box because you're not replacing horses. And so now we got a big hole over here. The Russians are trying to adjust. First thing they were doing was these guys were trying to shift in here to stop DeVoe's first corps. Well, now it looks like they're going to have to shift this way. The reserve guard has moved in, and like I said, DeVoe, Ney, and Eugene, they blew over these things. Now, like I say, DeVoe still holds this one, but they were up and over the Great Redoubt, and they got counterattacked by cavalry. The guard came up, and we see the guard is pretty healthy, and just drove them back. And if they, I don't want to say shatter, but you see the stack of Ney's units over here that are in the withdrawal box. That was in the last turn. I think there was 1 already there. And then Eugene, he's got 3. All right, so they did a lot of damage. That little guard unit and some of this cavalry chased these guys off. So what I thought was just a complete smoke show for the French has sort of been flip-flopped. Now, the dilemma is that nobody was really, the guard came up and struck DeVoe and chased him off a little bit, but DeVoe is recovering his units, which we'll talk about that here in a second. And he's still got a load of guns. Now, I will tell you this, what I'm learning. Don't leave your guns in shock or charge range and not stacked with infantry, all right? Because you're going to suffer. They do not defend. They don't add anything to shock combat. If they are shocked combat, so if a unit passes cohesion to shock combat and they reaction fire, don't drive the attacking and the shocking unit away, it's an elimination. The guns are eliminated. They go right to the eliminated box. So, and as you can see, there's already a lot of Russian eliminated. DeVoe's lost 2 batteries. Ney's lost 2 batteries. So there's a lot of stuff that's already destroyed. I think the difference is going to be in this one here is when the guard rolls up. All right. So recovering disorder. All right. So the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to leave units that are on their disordered side near the enemy. When they get an activation, you want to move them away. Now, when you get these limited activations where you're not under orders, you're only moving half movement. So you're not going very far. And to disengage, it costs extra movement points. So you're only going to end up moving 1 hex. Now, one cool thing is while you can't move into the zone of control, fortunately, in this game here, if this guy needed to retreat to this French unit sitting there, he could retreat there because the French unit's facing that way. But he's still in zone of control. And even if he had 18 movement points, he's going to stop right there when he moves. So there's the dilemma for that. And how this guy is held on, because he's got 12 strength points sitting in there, and his cohesion is only a 4 right now. But DeVoe has just not been successful in driving him out of there. And now, like I say, the Russian guard is up in here now. They don't have a whole lot of units. They got some pretty decent cavalry that's just ordered. All right, so what you do is when you get your activation, you want to move those guys away, okay? Now, you won't be able to recover them because they moved. But on the next turn, if they're not adjacent to an enemy unit, you can roll at the end of their activation phase. The last thing you do is rally. They can roll to recover back to their non-disordered side, okay? So that's how you, and that's kind of, and it works because I've had to do it a lot. Fortunately for the French, a lot of their formations, they have multiple units, so they can sort of flip-flop, pull units back, put units up, kind of like in GBHCW, what you should be doing. Some regiments up, not some regiments back in reserve. You can do that. But like I say, I'm impressed with this game. This system is not hard. It is so simple. I've had 0 issues with these rules, and this rule book is stamped 2003. So maybe this thing was created in 03 and it didn't release till 04. But, and this is not a core, and I printed this one. It's not a core rule book. It specifically says Borodino, a Triumph and Glory game rule book. So it's got all your core rules in there, and it's got your 2 scenarios in there. Don't know if this thing had any designer's notes or anything in it. Does have the counter scans in the back, but this is in black and white. So, but yeah, not a heavy game. The map is looks like it's filled when you first set it up. A lot of troops on the map. No reinforcements. You either are successful at recovering troops that are withdrawn because they got chased away, and they drop to the recovery box, and then they get to recover and come back on the map within 3 units of a sister unit or another unit from that army, or they're eliminated, plain and simple. And we played 4 or 5 turns now. It's changing a little bit here. The problem is I got such a cluster F of Russian troops over here that I can't seem to get through unless I can get a full activation on them to get them in here to fight Eugene off. They do have the line here, and they have moved forward a little bit. These guys did move out a little bit, and they drove Eugene off. But then you've got these militia guys, and the Russians have a bunch of them. They have 0 cohesion. They don't even have weapons. They're carrying probably pikes and halberds and stuff like that. And they might have a strength of 10, but they're nothing but speed bumps. You put them out front, they're speed bumps, because what happens is when you do shock combat, one of your die roll modifiers, and it's not just one, it is the cohesion difference. So you get these French troops with 5s and 6s going against one of these 0 militia units, you're getting a +6, you're getting a +6 die roll modifier on that shock resolution chart. And if you roll anything from a 5 and up, the defender's going to lose. Well, my God, if you're starting with a 6 and you roll a 0, you've already got him chased away. So those militia units, let me tell you what they're used for. You throw them out there in front, in my opinion, and get them to stop the French in their zone of control for 1 freaking turn. All right. Some units don't have zone of control this game, but I can't tell you what those are off the top of my head. I think it's artillery's one of them. I'm not sure. But yeah, so I don't know. I need to take this down because I need to do something else. But this damn game is so fun, and I think I want to try to find the other one. But hey, there you go. There's the basics of Borodino, GMT Games, 2004, Richard Berg game. There's no other notes inside here that say who else helped with it. But I know I've heard some people mention that maybe they play tested or something like that. I have to do some research on that. But guys, it's a very good game with all the games that we have out there on Napoleonics nowadays between like La Bataille and the old Wellington's Victory, the SPI system and stuff like that. I mean, the OSG library, all marvelous games. But if you want to play something focused on a specific, and honestly, I need to do some digging on these. If the Jour de, I've seen the Jour de Gloire, some of the pictures of the Jour de Gloire, they don't quite look like these. I'm sure the rule set's pretty similar, but they don't quite look like these. Victus had a different touch to the games, okay? But, man, it would have been awesome for them to have been 10, 15 games from Napoleonics in this format here. I don't know what's in the Battles of Napoleon 1, which I would assume would be like volume 1 to this. I got to do some research on that and maybe try to find somebody, I hope, that's got one that isn't asking an arm and a leg for a game that old, even though it's probably worth every penny of it, in my opinion, especially if that one has multiple battles in it. So, but hey, if you got one out there and you want to part with it, reach out to me and, give me a decent number, and maybe I'll take it off your hands because I sure would like to play it. Fun game, Borodino, GMT Games, 2004, Richard Berg. If you got it and you like Napoleonics, I'm telling you, get this thing out and play it. It's one map, play it. It's fun. It's easy to learn. And trust me, you'll have a blast with it. And we'll talk to you later.